All right, so we're joined from Tampa, Florida, by the founder of Black Unicorn Education, graduate of Dillard University, graduate of University of South Florida, tech entrepreneur, one of the leaders in AI in the United States, the amazing Dr. Ora Tanner. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and share with your students.
Well, this is our computer science engineering class. I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School. And we're recording this for all of our computer science engineering students in Madison County schools and for our YouTube channel. So giving you a big platform today. So we appreciate it. So before we get into all the cool AI and tech and robotics things you do, because it is really interesting, just tell us a little bit about your background, because you're a graduate of Dillard University down in New Orleans, a great HBCU. Then you went on to the University of South Florida. So tell us about your college and education background.
Yeah, my freshman year, I actually went to Fisk University, which is another HBCU up in Nashville, Tennessee. And then I ended up transferring down to Dillard in New Orleans. I went to school for physics. Started off as a physics chemistry double major, but once I had to take organic chemistry, I was like, never mind. So I did graduate from Dillard with a bachelor's in physics, and then I ended up wanting to further my education. So ended up coming to Tampa to work on my master's. That was also in physics. So I worked in nuclear medicine, which was using the highly radioactive materials to treat brain cancer and breast cancer. So I was doing research in that area. And yeah, then did a 180 and got into education.
Now, that led you eventually to start Black Unicorn Education. So, I did talk briefly before you came on about what a Black Unicorn is. So tell us about the inspiration for that and what all you guys do, because there really has been a barrier for Black students to get into AI and robotics, and that's something you're trying to change. So tell us about a little bit about the inspiration of that and some of the things you guys do, not just in Florida, but all over the country.
Right. Yeah, the inspiration for Black Unicorn, just the company itself of what I'm doing, which is to educate diverse communities through, I say, unique programs, products, and community-based events. Came from some work I was doing earlier. Well, actually, it goes back. I was teaching 8th grade science at a school where majority of the students, like 98% of the students, were Black. However, they just had really low expectations of the students. And of course, that bothers me. And the students hated science coming in. And so that actually inspired me to go back to graduate school to work on a PhD in instructional technology, because under me, my students, they soared. I showed them how to use technology to tell their stories, show them how to use technology to learn better. And so I just saw, even though they were in 8th grade, a lot of them were at a 3rd grade reading level, but they were able to surpass that with technology. So in my mind, I'm like, hey, maybe these teachers are not, building learning the way that, my kids could learn. So that's why I went back to work on my PhD. But during my doctoral studies, just had a lot of internships, fellowships. One of them I ended up out in Silicon Valley, which is out in Mountain View in California, the West Coast, where all the big tech companies are. And while I was out there, just the way they were talking about AI, I was like, oh my gosh, my students are going to get like just sideswiped by the future, because they're not going to be ready, because who would have taught them this? And they're not in, most schools that have high concentrations of Black students don't offer foundational computer science courses. So right now, only, I believe, 47% of high schools actually offer computer science. So the large majority are not going to get that opportunity. So in 2020, I co-founded a nonprofit with 2 other guys out of Silicon Valley. And that's where I developed a curricula to teach in just a different way, on-ramp for students to learn about artificial intelligence. And we ended up reaching 30,000 students in 9 states and 15 countries. And so I wanted to be able to continue that work. They went on, focus on some other things, but I'm like, no, I, want to make sure Black communities, Hispanic communities are ready for AI. And so the name Black Unicorn kind of comes as a call out to there's really not any Black people, in AI. So they're basically, unicorns in the space. Also a call out to women, especially Black women in the space of AI. And then the third thing around that is I plan to become a unicorn company, which means when you're a unicorn, that means your company has a valuation of $1 billion. So
Wow.
that's also an aspiration. And then just the history behind it is originally, when you go back to Greek mythology, unicorns were depicted as Black. And so somewhere down the line, they changed that. So a little bit behind that.
I did not know that. Wow. Incredible. Now, when you talk about AI, you hear all the headlines about AI is going to replace jobs, robots are going to replace jobs. And I think that's kind of a misnomer. Even though jobs in every industry are going more toward AI and robotics, it's not that the jobs are going away, the types of jobs are changing. So like you said, when people are not exposed to that, that's when they don't have the skills these companies need. So what are some of the trends you're seeing? Because obviously we're here in Mississippi, we have a big manufacturing space. We have automobiles, clothes, food, electronics, all kind of things. Now, those companies are not going to close and they're not going to stop hiring humans, but they're going to need humans to have these robotic and AI skills in order to have these jobs. So talk a little bit about some of those trends that you're seeing and why it's so important for kids to at least be familiar with basic robotic and AI and computer science coming out of high school.
Yes. So the reality of the future of work or the future workforce is that you will most likely be working with AI, AI systems. So it's really important that you understand how they work. Also, understanding just what the limitations are AI, what AI can and cannot do. So a lot of our conceptions about AI come from the movies and science fiction and comic books and things like that. So it is not sentient, no matter what anyone says, meaning it's not self-aware, it can't just start making its own decisions. It's basically, the definition that I like to use is artificial intelligence is the attempt of computers or machines to simulate the problem solving and the decision-making capabilities of humans. And I always like the joke that AI stands for attempted intelligence because it is not like us. And so yeah, a lot of the jobs that are out right now, like you'll see it a lot, especially in stores, you'll see there's less and less cashiers because putting your items across the scanner, a computer can do that. It's also being used I was just came back Sunday from New York Fashion Week, where I was talking about how AI is being used in fashion, but they're actually using AI to generate images of more diverse models. So there's not really a lot of Black models in the space. Their solution was, hey, we'll make our own. So they're using AI to make images of models of different colors and shapes. Here in Florida, you might have it there as well. You can actually use AI to use your palm, like in some of the schools, to pay for their school lunch because the AI is able to scan your hand, recognize it, and then match it to your payment information. It's being used in agriculture and farming. There are actually autonomous robot bees like that are able to scan fields and be like, oh, it's not pollinated over there, and then pollinate it. So literally pretty much any sector you can think of, they're finding ways to use AI to automate those tasks. So the thing is, AI is really good at rote, repetitive, mundane tasks. So we probably don't want human beings like flipping burgers. A lot of the restaurants are now using robotic arms to flip the burgers, drop the fries, and do all that stuff. And a human is overseeing all of that. But humans are best at, understanding context, complex decision-making, multitasking. AI is right now can only do one thing, and that's it. Like Netflix only recommends movies, or Siri only recognizes your voice and then carries out that task. Amazon, uses all your data to recommend things you want to buy. So just having that understanding that you'll be working with AI. The saying right now is that AI is not going to take your job, but someone who knows and understands and knows how to use AI most likely will.
There you go. And even in the healthcare, because one thing we have here at Madison County Schools, we have a great career center. And it's called VOTEC in other parts of the state and country. But we have an engineering and robotics academy. We also have one on campus at Ridgeland High School. We have a great health science program there. We have a drone program there. All those are going to be things that are going to be working with artificial intelligence. And you don't even have to do the 4-year college degree for that. You can do the associates and the certifications and find a great career in robotics, because like you just said, every industry is going to need AI people. They're going to need people that even just have an associate's in drafting. We have a community college here that does engineering drafting. So it's not necessarily I have to go to a 4-year and get a master's and a PhD on all this. I can never do that. There's pretty much every industry and every level of education is going to start requiring these skills.
Yeah. And I would say they're not even starting, they already are.
Yeah.
So ChatGPT literally came out November 30th of last year, but already 90% of employers want to see some type of ChatGPT skills from people that are coming in. This is like entry-level people. And so for those not familiar with ChatGPT, it's basically an AI chatbot, which means you can type in something into this text box and then it generates whatever you tell it or ask it. So you could say, hey, write me a 5-page paper about, the factors that cause the World War II. And then because the AI basically is using data, it's basically reading the entire internet. It's able to make meaning. I put that in air quotes because it really doesn't understand, but it's really following patterns to kind of predict what words make sense. So it will write that 5-page paper for you within seconds. And the other thing is there's other tools besides ChatGPT. And I do want to point this out. It's even more important, especially for Black students, to understand what AI is, because a study just came out that showed 51% of Black adults in the United States have not heard anything at all about GPT, which is one of the most transformative tools, of our time. And I travel around and I find that that's true. Like I'll be like, oh, ChatGPT or even AI, and it's like, what's that? So the employers are looking for these skills. And if you start just learning about them now, you can actually go online and start playing around with these tools. You can actually be way ahead of the game. And just over the last 6 months, a lot of employees who have decided to go ahead and learn about this have seen on average a $10,000 raise. So people who understand AI, know about it, are starting to get paid more because jobs desperately want that as a knowledge and skill base.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to my next thing I wanted to talk about, because we're an all-Black community in very rural Mississippi, very hardworking community, very proud community. But a lot of times these rural Black communities get skipped over with technology. But it's also important for these kids to knowing these basic coding skills, knowing these basic computer skills, even if they don't want to do the 4-year college thing. I've heard tech professionals tell me with their own mouth, we'd rather have somebody with a certification and experience in our technology than somebody that has a computer science degree. So they can get into these fields and get great jobs just knowing these basic skills after 1 or 2 years of high school.
Right. And I do want to point out, like I'm not anti-coding, but right now with AI, you don't even have to know how to code because it's getting better and better and better at doing basic code. And there's a saying that English is the new programming language, because with AI, it understands natural. With AI, it understands natural language. Like if you can type a sentence of what you want, for instance, I have some different tools pulled up here, but if you want to say, hey, make me a website about a company that sells, barbecue unicorn meat. If you can type that, the AI will then go make you an entire website. If you want to create a logo, you put in very detailed instructions in, whatever your English is, whatever your language is. Right now, English is the main language, and it will create that. And the other thing also, just in the age of AI, like a report just came out by IBM, whereas STEM skills used to be at the very top of the list, it is now at the bottom. And now, because of AI being able to take care of, more of these technical tasks, the skills that are most important right now are effective communication, being able to work on a team. And the number one thing you need to know how to do is time management and prioritization, because there's so many AI tools out there. You can spend hours and hours just whatever, but the people skills, what they call the soft skills, are now in higher demand than ever with AI.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that too, because these kids get so mad at us, and I can speak for all the teachers that'll see this later. They get so mad at us when we make them do a presentation in front of 15, 20 people. And it's not to be mean, but me and you are obviously comfortable speaking in front of large groups. You don't have to be able to speak in front of a large group, but once you've done something in technology, you've got to be able to explain it to a customer. You've got to explain it to a client. You've got to explain it to a team member. AI cannot talk for you. You have to be able to articulate thoughts, articulate ideas. And for all you know, you're articulating your idea could be a game changer on the way things are done. So even though we are dependent on technology, I think it's important that we don't get too dependent on it to where we lose our face-to-face communication skills.
Right. And that's a great point, because people are using these artificial intelligence tools for everything. I myself, even though I teach about it, I will not use it, to write a speech or, even my own emails, because I want my authentic voice to come through in what I'm saying. So even if you're afraid, like me, I'm an introvert, so I do not like speaking in front of people, but it's a required part of what I do. But if you could just be yourself, make sure you know your stuff, but then just be you and speak, then you'll find that your message really hits. So there are just some things that AI has not been able to do to date, and I just think it never will. It can't have they keep putting out these lists of the jobs where AI will most likely automate it, but things like you mentioned in Mississippi, the number one job that has almost a 0% chance of AI automating or taking over is all the healthcare. Nurse is number one, because think about what nurse has to do. They have to be able, to read emotions, is that patient in pain, communicate with them, in an effective way, in a caring way. Things could change day to day, hour to hour, hey, they were doing good at 10 o'clock, now at 12 o'clock. And then AI just can't keep up with all of that uncertainty. Yeah. So there are just certain jobs where you need humans, period.
Yeah, but that I was at a conference last year where an AI speaker was talking about nurses specifically, saying it will not be taken over by AI, but it's going to have to work with AI, because things that a human may struggle with, or maybe the diagnosis, with the symptoms, there could be something that a human can miss. AI could catch a symptom of a patient, and then obviously you would need the human touch. So it's more of a working with AI. So you can't be one of these people. You got to be receptive to the technology working with you in certain careers.
Yeah, but that also brings up another point that I want to make sure to make, is the with piece. Because what's happening a lot of times is people are just taking the final decision of AI, and they think that, oh, well, it's a machine, it's not gonna have, it's not gonna make any mistakes, it doesn't have any bias, but what we have found is that these AI systems have bias built into them because of who's making them, the data sets. So like in law enforcement, like to date, 6 Black people, a majority of them being in Detroit, have been sent to jail because an AI identified them as someone who committed a crime, and they didn't. The latest one was just a few months ago, where they arrested a woman, sent her to jail because they said she carjacked someone, and this woman was 8 months pregnant, and she was like, "So you think I'm going to carjack?" But they said, "Hey, the AI said it was you," identified her as the suspect. So we have to, look at the results that AI gives us, but then we have to go through, hey, does this make sense? And it's being used for a lot of decisions that, like, it's not good at moral decisions. It just uses data and spits out an answer. So it's being decided, who gets scholarships, who doesn't, who gets a mortgage, who doesn't. Like 80% of Black people who are trying to buy a home have been turned down because they're using AI to determine who's credit worthy. Even with jobs themselves, AI is being used to scan applications. And so what happens is if you have a Black sounding name, it kicks out your application. If you went to an HBCU, a community college, all girls school or something, it's kicking out applications. So there are some problems, even though it can do some amazing things, there still are a lot of problems that have to be fixed, and bias is one of the biggest ones.
Absolutely, man. I did not know that. That's crazy. Well, I got one more question I wanted to ask before I get to the students' questions. And I ask every guest that has the same thing. You went to a great HBCU, Dillard University in New Orleans, for your undergrad, and we got some great HBCUs here in Mississippi: Tougaloo, Jackson State, Alcorn, Russ, or just to name a few. And you went to a PWI, a great, huge university, University of South Florida in Tampa. So that's an interesting combination. So you did HBCU undergrad, PWI for your postgraduate work. So talk a little bit about the pros and cons of both, because they both offer so much to students, but completely different experiences.
Right. So for my undergrad, one, it was culture shock for me because I was born and raised in Minnesota. So going from Minnesota to just everybody is Black, what's up with that? So that was kind of culture shock. But my roommates and things, they grew up in like Miami and Chicago, so they went to all Black high schools and things like that. So that was just something different for me. But I would say the biggest thing I think that I took away from going to an HBCU, the biggest pro, is that I really instilled a sense of pride. You understand you're a part of a legacy to all the other people who went before you. My professors were super, 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 super hard on me. Like, they would not let me slide, and they, basically pulled out the greatness. They really, really cared about me as a person. And so they were, really nurturing and coaching me, encouraging me, to do things and ensuring that I was successful. So some of the cons with that is those are more on the administrative side, like, not having enough room in the dorms and running out of food, in the cafeteria and stuff like that. But other than that, I, and just keeping facilities updated because they don't get a lot of money at funding, unfortunately, at the HBCUs. So those are kind of minor to my overall experience. And then just going to a predominantly white institution, which USF is actually not that bad. They have one of the more diverse campuses. They've won awards in the United States. So there, I think it was just more because I was in physics in my particular department, which was all male, and they're from India, Africa, China. So those cultures really look down on women and obviously look down on Black people. So being a Black woman is just kind of like they just straight up like, hey, we don't expect you to make it. Like, they weren't even trying to hide it. But that was motivation for me. Like, okay, let me go find some people who will help me. And that's one thing, whatever school you go to, if the people who are supposed to help you don't, seek out help from someone else who will. So The program was great, despite, it was probably one of the hardest things I had to do in my master's, because I did face a lot of racism, unfortunately. And even though growing up in Minnesota, where I faced none, that was just one of the times I did. But I was able to just overcome it and chalk it up to ignorance, basically, because they have not had to deal with, someone like me being in their program before. But I didn't let it, make me bitter or anything like that. It's just, hey, you're misinformed. So.
Yeah, and one thing I always say is, we always say representation matters, and it does, because it does help, especially young Black kids, young Hispanic kids that'll see this later, to see other people that have looked like them be in these fields, because especially in rural areas, you're only exposed to a certain amount of things. So if you see other people have done it, or even if you want to be the first one, just because you're the first at something doesn't mean you can't be the best at something. And that's something I say often, that look, if you want to take a chance on yourself, take a chance on yourself. For all you know, you could change the world. So you don't have to do what your environment has closed you into. There really are so many opportunities now that did not exist 10, 15, or even 5 years ago, that these young people should really look into, that are stuff that they may never have even heard of.
Yeah. And just a point on that too, as well, like another connection I have to you and your students is both my parents are from Mississippi. So my mom's from Tutwiler, my dad's from Kilmichael, small towns. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
And I'm one of 7. I have 6 other siblings, but my background was really kind of, drugs, domestic violence, and alcohol and all these things. But even coming from those experiences, you can't let that determine what you can do. And so even though had a lot of things going on, my parents always, my mom only went through the 6th grade, my dad through the 12th grade, but they encouraged me, like, hey, if this is what you want to do, go for it. I had to kind of navigate a lot of it by myself, because they didn't know what to do to help me. But you can't let how you start determine how you end, and never ever let money determine where you can go. Because the schools I went to, like, even though they're HBCUs, they were expensive. But I was just determined, like, hey, I'm going to find a way. I'm going to apply for 100 scholarships, which is basically what I did, and just do everything I can to reach my dream. So it is possible. So don't let being from Mississippi rule, certain types of family backgrounds. Like, it doesn't matter. It just matters, what do you do now to move forward?
Yeah, and I was actually born not far from Tutwiler in Greenville. And you talk about, with these grants that are now available to so many students, and the scholarships from the ACT have never been bigger in Mississippi. It's even, on the community college level, just to get in your foot in the door and at least get some certifications. It really has never been a better time to apply yourself as a student to take that next step. But I do have a few questions from the students. This first one is Krishan Smith. He's in 10th grade. He's one of our football players here. And he asked, did you ever think you would be where you are today? And if you did, how did you think you were going to be able to face the challenges?
I always knew that I would be a scientist, because since I was little, I always said, I'm going to work with robots. I'm going to be a scientist working in the lab. So I just always had that picture in my mind. And so I think that basically helped me to deal with all the challenges, because my thing is, I have to get to that picture in my head. Like, I didn't think, I would be working on PhD and traveling all around and be an entrepreneur. I never thought that. I just thought, hey, I'm going to work in a lab doing cool experiments. But just having a concrete picture of my future, that is what just kept me on my path. When I got super down, whatever, I just remember that picture. And that's what helped me, overcome just the different things. And then once I got into it, just kind of knowing the types of things I would face, because I'm going into spaces where there aren't a lot of Black people. So just researching that, I knew, like, okay, this could happen. How am I going to mentally prepare myself for that?
That's awesome. This is Rondell Ellis. He's in 9th grade. And he asked, explain a time you had to use logic to solve an engineering problem.
Let me see. Logic problem. I'm trying to think. Because a lot of the things I have done have been
That's
in
probably every day.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I think just overall, like when I'm building things for different people, money and budget is a issue. So when you start running out of money, I have to find like, okay, what is the way I can design or build this thing um, with the money that's there? Because I can't build it out how we originally budgeted it. So that happens a lot where we start with a certain amount of money to do a project, and then money runs out, and then you have to get real creative on how to build the thing. So
Awesome. This is Tykevian Boyd, and he asked, how advanced do you think AI might get in the future?
that's a good question. So a lot of people talk about what's called artificial general intelligence and even super intelligence, and that's where they think AI systems will be better at being human than humans are, and they'll be able to do everything we can and more. I personally don't think that will be achieved. Like right now, even all the crazy things you see AI doing, it's called artificial narrow intelligence, meaning it can just do that one task. So I think it will get really good, but the thing with AI is it always needs people to create data sets, and it always needs the people to go get that data and organize that data for it to be able to learn from. And that is not an easy task. So maybe sometime in the future, it might do that, but I just don't think it will get to the point where some people are saying it will be, because the part that we do as humans is very complex. And so and a lot of experts agree, but some are gung ho and say, they're going to be just like us, but I disagree.
Yeah, the movie I, Robot with Will Smith, I love the movie, but it is so unrealistic. I mean, if you look, there's no way. It is a great movie. You need to watch it, but it's extremely unrealistic. I just got one more. This is Michael Sherrill. He's in 10th grade, also one of our football players. And he asked, what is the biggest motivation you have to keep pushing blacks in artificial intelligence?
My biggest motivation is, once again, I have a picture in my head. So for me, Black people, when you study the history or just what we do, we are like the biggest innovators in technology. So any technology that comes out, we go in there and start using it in ways that people didn't think of. So, Twitter is Twitter because of Black Twitter. There's an app called Clubhouse. We took over that. Like, it was originally supposed to be a place where, techie people met up, but we came in and started doing, DJ sets and ministry and all these other things. And, TikTok wouldn't be TikTok without the trends and things that we set. So I am just committed to, hey, when it comes to AI, we're not just going to be consumers. We're not just going to go in and start using it again, and then people steal our ideas, which always happens. We're going to be the leaders. We're going to be the ones that shape it. We're going to be the ones that master it first and decide how it's going to be used and get paid for that. So I see it as a real opportunity to build wealth and get a lot of people out of poverty. So that's what drives me, and I'm going to see it happen.
Unbelievable. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us in your busy schedule. But before we go, first of all, tell us where we can find Black Unicorn Education online.
You can find me on LinkedIn under Ora Tanner. I also have stuff I've been putting out on Facebook, although no one's really on Facebook, but the people I'm trying to reach are there. Also under my name. And on Instagram, I at Black Unicorn Education. There's some videos I made on TikTok that I just posted on there, but I'm about to start back again. So those are like the three places. And my website.
Yeah, and you've also been in Forbes magazine. I know you're pretty humble, but yeah, you've been in some national magazines. But before we go, you mentioned yourself that you grew up just like everybody that's watching with me now. You grew up as a Black girl with parents, 7 kids. It wasn't the easiest of easiest situations, but yet you've become a leader not only in the state of Florida but all over the world in technology, and you're just such a great example of what is possible. So obviously these kids are getting a leg up now at 14, 15, 16 years old. What can they do to overcome the same obstacles that you face to follow in footsteps of people like you?
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest things that I think helped me overcome all of that is my faith. Like, I am a believer. So just having that relationship with God. But the other one is really, I like said to myself, I am going to be an expert in this field. And so I spend hours, instead of watching Netflix or scrolling on my phone, I do put in study time to know everything there is about my field. You keep the balance. And there's a bunch of things you can attend virtually. So I go to a lot of virtual workshops in my community. They're having, get-togethers, conferences, different things. So just going to the stuff in my community, taking advantage of every opportunity. If there's stuff at school, going to that. Then as you start to show up, people begin to know your name. So just being ready for the opportunities that will definitely come.
That's incredible. Well, again, we thank you so much for joining us. I learned a lot today, so I think I could speak for everybody and saying the same, but it's just amazing all the work you're doing down there in Tampa, and just great things to come. And you're just such an inspiration to so many people. It is just so interesting and so cool what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to have talked to your students. Feel free to reach out, and yeah, thank you so much. This was fun.
All right. Dr. Ora Tanner down in Tampa, Florida. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Bye.
talk to you soon, my friend.